The Congress is back with a fresh Rafale accusation just a day after Prime Minister Narendra Modi defended the French fighter jet deal in Parliament. The Congress President Rahul Gandhi is basing his fresh attack on an investigative piece published in The Hindu this morning. The story, which is the second such expose from the newspaper, refers to a Defence Ministry note in 2015 that objects to the interference officials from the Prime Minister's office are undertaking in the negotiations between India and France. A specific negotiations team is in place to conduct all meetings with vendors who India buys defence equipment from. In this case, it seems the PMO was involved closely too. The allegations of interference have been denied by the current Defence Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. To understand more about this latest twist to the Rafale story, I am speaking now with N. Ram, Chairman of the Hindu Publishing Group and author of the story that has turned into the latest political fodder for the Congress to attack Narendra Modi. Mr. Ram, welcome to the show and thank you for speaking with us. We spoke after your first piece on Rafale as well. Can you quickly, in the beginning, just lay out for us what is different and the most important aspects of this second story on the Rafale deal, which is perhaps why it has become such a huge political controversy as well?
Yes, I think the central point here is that different arms of the government were pulling in different directions and taking contrary positions. And the political fiat, in a highly arbitrary way, was at play. So this particular story, which is highly focused on documentation, which shows that senior officials in the Defence Ministry, going right up to the Defence Secretary, the then Defence Secretary, objected very strongly, using strong or even harsh language, you could say, about parallel negotiations, which in effect took place behind their back from the PMO. They put it down in so many words: parallel negotiations, which will undermine the Indian negotiating position seriously, and France will take advantage of it. We've seen in the previous story and what has been published elsewhere, perhaps, it has been brought out that the Indian the INT, the Indian negotiation team, was profoundly divided down the middle, three opposing, taking a different position on 10 contentious issues, 4 overriding them. But the 3 are financial experts. So it was on price, it was on the benchmark price, it was on the design and development cost, which was demanded by the company Dassault for the 13 India-specific enhancements and so on. It was on sovereign guarantee. And instead they gave a letter of comfort. It was on deliveries. It was on Dassault's fragile financial position. And it was also on the question of the Eurofighter, which came back into play with a very attractive, what looked like a very attractive offer of a 20% reduction or 20% discount, accelerated delivery, and so on. That story was focused on narrowly on pricing per aircraft. Why has the government refused to reveal the price per aircraft? A fully fitted combat-ready aircraft, that was the story there. This story is about parallel negotiations taking place. That is, I think, completely new. This material, earlier there were allegations that there was political interference or it was the work of the Prime Minister. But this is the documentation that shows there was strenuous objection within the Defence Ministry, going right up to the Defence Secretary,
yes,
so on. So this did not deal. Yes, so that's the central story. That
just to put this in perspective, sir. So far, your earlier story talked about differences of opinion within the Indian negotiating team. Now we are looking at concerns being raised by Defence Secretary at that point that parallel negotiations may be derailing what the primary team, which is supposed to do the negotiations, which is the Indian negotiations team, and this is in context of letter of comfort versus sovereign guarantee. If you can now take us through What is the difference between the two? Because we ended up with a letter of comfort, and this was raised as a question about the Rafale deal as well. Ideally, there should have been a sovereign guarantee from the Republic of France, guaranteeing whatever we have agreed to.
Yes, a sovereign guarantee or a government guarantee, or they even said a bank guarantee, which was not forthcoming given Dassault's fragile position. But the sovereign guarantee was demanded not just by these officials in the Defence Ministry, but by the Ministry of Law and Justice. And we have documentation on that. We have access to documentation where the specific language or clause was drafted in the Law Ministry, in the Law and Justice Ministry, put forward. The French rejected it. This story, what this story tells us is how the whole thing was undermined. It was shot out in the air by an intervention from the Prime Minister's office, carried out by a particular Foreign Service officer who was JS to the PM at that point, Mr. Ashraf. And moreover, this was not intimated to the negotiating team or the Defense Secretary, because they find out only from a letter written to them by the head of the French negotiating team that so-and-so has been in touch with us and saying these issues are, the point there that he made was these issues are settled. So a letter of comfort is enough. There's no need for a sovereign guarantee, and it's all settled. It became a fait accompli.
Okay. So what's the difference? What's the difference between a letter of comfort and a sovereign guarantee? Why should we be worried if there's a letter of comfort? It's unlikely that France is going to renege on its promises, or Dassault is suddenly going to pack up and not give us these planes. So practically speaking, why should it really matter?
The sovereign guarantee is at a very high level between two states. You don't go back on sovereign guarantee. A letter of comfort has no legal sanction of any kind. It's only a political support, maybe. And the real concern, if you look at the documents relating to the discussions in the INT, the Indian negotiating team, you'll see what the concerns are. The concerns are that Dassault's financial position is quite precarious. It's very fragile and even precarious. And there is no guarantee that for the money you already paid, the advance payments, you're going to get the aircraft. What if they go bust? What if they default? Who's going to guarantee it? And a sovereign guarantee would have meant that the French state would have guaranteed this, would have ensured this against any possible default by the manufacturer. That is the demand.
So in response, I guess, in a sense, the news agency ANI has put out this letter from the French government to the Prime Minister's office dated 8 September 2016, and the highlighted portions in that tweet that ANI put out, so I guess that's the important bits that people want us to read, says that I hereby confirm that the government of the French Republic is fully committed in doing whatever is necessary to make sure that industrialists, Dassault Aviation and MBDA France, each in their own respect, do their utmost to fully respect all their obligations in accordance with the IGA, etc. So it is a promise in a sense. It is a promise in a sense, and that would be the counter argument that you have this letter. So what's the big fuss about not having a sovereign guarantee?
Because a sovereign guarantee is gold standard in these matters. When there is any doubt about the financial status of one party, a sovereign guarantee is absolute. It guarantees the state's reputation is at stake. So the state puts its might behind this and guarantees it. They refuse to do it. Why did France refuse? Why did France refuse to do it? Why didn't they give a sovereign guarantee if they were so confident? Why, a letter of comfort from the Prime Minister of France saying, yeah, we'll support it. That is not a legal document. A sovereign guarantee is legally enforceable. This is not legally enforceable. And there were also other related matters here where bank guarantees were demanded. The Dassault couldn't get that.
Okay, I want to come to the political reactions and the fallout of this report, because it would be hard to ignore what has happened next. So of course Rahul Gandhi has looked at this report and decided to hold a press conference this morning. It's been timely for him after the Prime Minister's defence and counter attack in Parliament yesterday, but he seems to have gone back to pricing, while your investigative piece specifically talks about the lack of sovereign guarantee, which is why one of the first responses to Rahul Gandhi's press conference from the Defence Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has been that or even from the then Defence Secretary G. Mohan Kumar has been that this was never about pricing. It was about the lack of sovereign guarantee versus letter of comfort. Do you think it is fair or correct the way that the Congress has latched on to this story and using it as a political armament?
Yeah, I think it's natural that a political party or the opposition parties as a whole will use material that comes out from investigative journalism if it's directed against their main adversary. No surprise in that. The BJP did it on Bofors, others did it, VP Singh did it, and so I'm not surprised by that. But the issue here is, why should Rahul Gandhi stick to only this? He's making a bigger point. We didn't say anything about 30,000 crores or anything, which he spoke about. But he's at liberty to make those points or those connections, and it's up to people to buy them or not. I don't think I listened to that press conference. In fact, I was on a program commenting on it after it's over on another channel, and he didn't draw any inferences from this so far as the pricing issue is concerned, as far as I can remember. But then our first story was on pricing. And others like the Caravan and Wire have published good articles, investigative pieces on the benchmark price being raised arbitrarily. And our last story was exactly on pricing, price per aircraft, price per fully fitted, combat-ready aircraft, not the bare-bones aircraft. So why did the government refuse to reveal the price per aircraft for Rafale jet? So that story was narrowly focused on it. The rest was context, background. This story is on an upstanding position taken by Defence Ministry officials. Now I think some of them perhaps are under pressure to put out statements to...
Yeah, but in a sense, G. Mohan Kumar's statement today has completely corroborated your story, Mr. Ram. Because yes, he doesn't deny the story. He just clarifies that it was about the letter of comfort versus sovereign guarantee, which is what your story is. So in that sense, it's an acceptance and a confirmation as well. I want to talk to you about, say, the counter narrative, and we saw that pretty clearly and effectively, if I may say, in the Prime Minister's speech and response in Parliament yesterday, where he says that the Congress governments sat on the deal for ages. Our armed forces need these aircrafts. Our Air Force needs this aircraft, and this fuss is unwarranted. The counter narrative could be, so what if the PMO was keeping a grip on what was happening to make sure that there were no hurdles and we got through as soon as possible, and then the deal went through as soon as possible so that we could get the aircrafts we need. What would be your response to that?
First, you've got to respect procedure. There's a good reason why elaborate procedure was laid down. Some people may think it's very over-elaborate or even bureaucratic, but it's been laid down for defense acquisitions. You've got to follow it. And in this case, in the notes submitted to the Supreme Court of India, the government made it out that the procedure was followed in full and said nothing about the Prime Minister, PMO's role in this matter. So that's important. Secondly, on the bigger question you raised, what's the big deal about this? About just getting 36 aircraft, etc. The UPA sat on it for so long. Yes, there was a Make in India promise. It's not easy to implement, and it took a long time. And Mr. Antony seems to have been very, very careful about not letting any controversy swirl around the Rafale deal as they conceived it. Mr. Trappier, at one point in 2015, said 95% of the negotiations are over. only 5% remains to be done. Just take them at face value. Now, what this government has done is suddenly sprung on the Air Force and the nation a new deal, a completely new deal. First of all, it's a government-to-government deal with no sovereign guarantee, because the performance has to be from the manufacturer. The government refuses to guarantee it in the way India wanted. So you accept a sort of diluted or non-legally enforceable letter of comfort. But look at it from the Air Force's standpoint. We know that the Air Force wanted about 45 squadrons. We have an aging fleet in many respects. The aircraft have been retired. They have not been replaced. There have been some crashes and so on. It's pretty much down. The sanctioned fleet strength is 42 squadrons, sanctioned by the government. Now, I don't know. They've not revealed what our fleet strength is, but it is believed to be in the low 30s. It's nowhere near 42. And there is a real concern and a sense of urgency here. 126 would have been 7 squadrons. That's not too bad. That was what was promised. It was difficult to put in place completely, yes. 18 fly away, the rest to be manufactured by HAL, Make in India,
yes,
which is part of the BJP's election manifesto. Here he goes, takes 36, 2 squadrons. What about the rest?
Yeah, absolutely. These have been some of the key points of contention which have been raised in the past. I just want to bring your attention to another important bit that has come out of the story, because various aspects on the Rafale have been unraveling over time. We've been on top of all of those developments. So in the same note that is the basis of your story, there is a response by the then Defence Minister Manohar Parrikar. And I think it's an important one, where he says, and I'm reading out from it, it appears the PMO and French President's office are monitoring the progress of the issue, which was an outcome of the summit meeting. Para 5 appears to be an overreaction. Defence Secretary may resolve issues matters in consultation with Private Secretary to PM. Para 5 here, one assumes, refers to the complaints that the Defence Secretary has of parallel negotiations. What struck me, Mr. Raman, please tell me if this is significant, is that the sentence starts with the Defence Minister, the then Defence Minister, saying, it appears that PMO and French President's office are monitoring the progress of the issue. Does that mean he was out of the loop? And would that be out of the ordinary? Wouldn't that be out of the ordinary if the Defence Minister didn't know that the PMO and the French government are having their own conversation about this on a defence deal?
Yes, it does show that he was out of the loop, and we know that he was out of the loop. And let's deconstruct this note. They made a big point about it. First, please see the date. This is supposed to be an urgent note. They're complaining that there are parallel negotiations. Take it up with them. If they don't want us to do it, let them do it. Let them set up a new scheme to negotiate under the agents of the PMO. That's the sense of that note. The date of the original note, November 24, 2015. The Defence Secretary initials it on 1/12/15. And Mr. Parrikar's handwritten note, sort of playing it safe note, is 11/1/16. A considerable time has elapsed. And what does it say? It appears that they are monitoring. Now, this is not monitoring. Monitoring means you keep an eye on progress. You don't directly interfere. You don't carry on parallel negotiations behind the back of the negotiators. You don't put out contrary impressions, and you don't let the leader of the other side in a letter say that it's already preempted. They've agreed to this. All that comes out. And then finally, almost comically, Mr. Parrikar here says that he asked the Defence Secretary to resolve the matter, resolve the issue matter in consultation with the Principal Secretary to PM. He's completely non-committal, except for what you just quoted, that it seems to be an overreaction. An overreaction, maybe it's a question of style. It's It's excessive maybe, but it doesn't say it's wrong. Your position is wrong. So he completely fails to disclose his position on it, except to say, perhaps you shouldn't have used such strong language. You overdone it. You overreacted to it. They're monitoring. Monitoring here is a cover-up word. That's why they didn't disclose it to the Supreme Court. They claim now that it was just monitoring, whereas this story shows there were parallel negotiations. That is how it was perceived. It was strenuously objected to by senior officials going up to the Defence Secretary.
Well, lots of interesting angles from this second big story from Enram's pen on the Rafale deal. Are we expecting more, Mr. Ram? Let me try and preempt it here. Is there a lot more coming?
I think you need to investigate the role of Mr. Parrikar now. Yeah.
Okay.
Because the role of Ajit Doval.
No, is there another story? Is there another story in the works from you?
You expect me to answer that question?
Okay, well, I'm expected to ask. So anyway, thank you so much for your time. N. Ram taking us through the story which has become the latest flashpoint between the Congress and the Modi government over the Rafale deal.